very special guest, someone that I'm sure a lot of people would love to hear from, and a lot of people can look up to him, especially myself, for what he's been through and how he's turned his life around. So I'm going to talk to a guy named Xavier. Xavier from Represent Justice. He was a guy that was, let me say, he had a rough start. At the age of 13, he was charged as an adult, spent 13 years in prison, finally used to get out, turned his life around, gave him a second chance, and I mean, he's doing phenomenal things today with mentoring young youth. He was charged at the age of 13 as an adult and spent 13 years in prison, and now he currently works for the Campaign for a Fair Sentence of Youth and an advocate to end life without parole for young men and women. So it's going to be a huge conversation. It's something that you don't want to miss out. Stay tuned as we're going to bring him in here shortly.
George, what's going on?
Hey, Xavier, welcome. How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing well. Good to see you.
Thank you for coming on. I was trying to tell everybody how awesome the opportunity it is to have you on this platform to speak. I wanted to invite you out here, and I want you to kind of share your story of, you know, what your role is with Represent Justice and how you got tied into it. And just let everyone on this platform know a little bit about yourself, because it's an amazing story. What you're doing now, and it's phenomenal.
Thank you.
And it's all respect over here, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm sorry we're adjusting. Again, it's a great honor to be here with you. I guess I'll start with my story. I grew up in the South Side of Chicago, not very far from where you grew up, George. And for me, growing up in that community during the 1980s, unfortunately, I apologize about that.
I think that's just the phones freezing up. But
yeah,
I just want everybody to know, if anyone didn't hear, this is Xavier. You know, he was charged as an adult at the age of 13 and served 13 years in prison. But he's helping out with Represent Justice, and he's doing great things now in life. And I just want everyone to hear your story, man, because it's remarkable. It's something that a lot of us can relate to. It's something that, you know, that needs to be heard, especially not just as adults, for our young youth. I feel like a lot of us may be misguided, even me as a child, you know, not having that backbone, knowing where to go. And, you know, to hear stories like you and your story, man, is just phenomenal. So I just want you to share a little bit about your story and about your life and, you know, how you turned everything around, man, because, like I said, no one's perfect in this world.
Right.
We all,
That's right.
you know, have mistakes, but at the same time, we're all human, man. And I have so much respect for you for bouncing back and doing what you have to do to make things right. So just share a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Well, what I appreciate most about what you're saying, and it really is indicative of your belief about kids and adults alike, is that, you know, we're all inherently good. And I want to make sure that, are we frozen up again?
I think your side is freezing up. My lips is moving on my side.
Okay, it's like, I have no idea why, but I would just say that, you know, we all have, you know, great capacity for change, you know. By any means necessary, by any means necessary.
Hey, see, that goes to you never give up, man. You
never give up. That's right. Let me set this up real quick, y'all. Hold on 1 second. So I won't lose connection. I'm gonna make sure I keep this thing. Okay, can you see and hear me?
I can see and hear you now. So, like
Beautiful.
I said, everyone, this is Xavier. Once again, like I said, he was charged as an adult at the age of 13, served 13 years, and now he's working with Represent Justice to be an advocate for young men and women to not ever get charged a life sentence as a young child. Man, that's huge, especially with the world today, man. That's something that we really need in this world. You know, like you said, some of these kids are just misguided, you know, don't have a direction, and doesn't mean they're a bad person. They just didn't know the right from wrong at that time. But like you said, for you to be an advocate for that, to get this installed, and, you know, to take that away where no judge can sentence a child to
That's
life.
right.
There's way more to life than to sentence a young child,
That's
to
right.
life in prison, man. He has his whole life ahead of him, and I definitely believe that, everyone deserves a second chance, and sometimes they deserve a third chance.
That's
I'm
right.
big on
That's right.
that. I'm big on, everyone's human, and
Yeah.
everyone, just has to get that break, man.
Yeah.
So tell a little bit, everyone now, a little bit about yourself, because I think this whole platform needs to hear.
Thank you so much, and I apologize to all the viewers. I would just, you talk about second chances. I had, if looking back in time and the mistakes that I made as a child, I would have literally have had to have received 19 chances, unfortunately, which really is indicative of really the kind of support we need to give to our kids, right? And so for me, having 19 arrests and 7 convictions by that very age, I was deemed as someone who was incorrigible, who was a throwaway child. I was sleeping in abandoned buildings. I was stealing. I was the kid who was living on the south side of Chicago, just trying to survive, who looked to the gang as a source of consolation and support. And unfortunately, that was the greatest strength in my life at that time, because I had a very abusive stepfather. I had a very volatile home life. My family contended with substance abuse, alcoholism, contended very much with mental health disorders. Both my mother and brother were contending with untreated and undiagnosed schizophrenia. And unfortunately, at 13 years old, all that trauma manifested in a very devastating way, in which case I was charged and I was guilty. In fact, I pled guilty to first-degree murder. I was a child at the time. I was instantly remorseful, and that was expressed, throughout that early experience with the courts. I hesitated at nothing in saying how sorry I was. Unfortunately, when you're in a court setting, that doesn't work well. Like, the restorative approach of working towards healing and creating an environment where a person could truly be remorseful, that doesn't happen in our courts, right? And so for me, pleading guilty meant a 25-year sentence. I was treated as an adult. I wasn't considered a child, although I was the smallest, 4'9", weighing about 110 or 112 pounds. I was viewed as a full adult. But what we know now, obviously, through brain science and what we understand about, having kids of our own, is that kids are different, and receiving that sentence as young as 13 years old meant that I would serve a day-for-day sentence, meaning for every good day that I served, they'll take one day off. And in my state back then, looking back to the way it was back then, that was a much easier scheme of sentences than it is today. A kid today, under the new truth in sentencing laws, well, not so new, but the existing truth in sentencing laws would mean every single bit of that time would have to have been served. And that reality for many individuals across the country means that you would serve decades, if not life without parole, inside a system that does not look back at who you are. It doesn't revisit you to see who you've become as an adult. They don't revisit you to see if you've become remorseful, if you had, I don't know, I guess in so many ways, just the maturity and sense and desire for a better life, which is what I experienced early on. And having grown up in the system, having woke up inside that place, and not because of it, but really just in spite of it, and being around amazing human beings who I got to know and called my friends and brothers, we decided to just change our lives. And for me, what that meant was getting my education. It meant getting back into school, doing things that I imagined I would have done had I been in a free society. And so what that looked like for me at the age of 18 was saying, well, by now I would have had my high school diploma, so let me get my GED. What that meant for me at the young age of 22 was, by now I should have had my associate degrees by now, then let me go ahead and do that. I came out of prison after 13 years. By the time I came out, I had several degrees. I had a bachelor's degree from Roosevelt University, a remorseful heart, and a desire to get back to my community. I've been out now for 16 years. And in the time of my release, I've worked in several capacities in several positions that were designed to keep children out of the criminal justice system and out of the grave, right? And that's just the reality, sadly, that many of the kids in my community face. And going back to my own community, working there really just gave me a full circle sense of a positive, outcome, given the fact that I was responsible for something so unfortunate as a child. I dedicated my life to working on behalf of victims and those who have survived harm in his memory, and his name was Pedro Martinez.
I mean, it's big because you used your time wisely, and
Thank
at
you.
the same time, the second chance that was given to you, you took advantage of it. You
Yeah.
know, you normally don't see that often, and you
Thank you.
used your time wisely. You came out with different degrees. You came out with a mind focus of, I want to make sure that not another young man or women can go through the same thing that I go through. So I'm going to
Yeah.
try to help mentor those young men and women. And
Yeah.
like I said, you know, why is second chances so important, especially in the youth today?
Yeah. Well, for me, it's important, and it's what I appreciate most about, about representing justice, is to recognize that kids are just, fundamentally different, right? We recognize that second chances, although we often speak about it in the context of what's deserved and not deserved, we very rarely look at it through the moral lens. We very rarely look at it through the intuition of what we now understand about kids, right? In terms of adolescent brain development, in terms of recognizing that children's brains are not fully formed. When I was a child, I was very impetuous and risk-taking. And it's really the hallmarks of adolescence. Sadly, to be a child and growing up in a very negative, not nurturing environment, and to be surrounded with so many, potential threats to my life, that manifested in a very devastating way. But at no point did an adult or anyone from the system stop and say, "Wait a minute, Xavier, why are you doing these things?
Sure.
What's going on inside your home? Why are you carrying guns? Why do you feel like your life is, in harm's way?" And had I had a chance to talk about these things, had I had someone to just take a peek into my life and what I was really going through, maybe then they would have discovered something going on much deeper. And so I want to share a little bit about the Represent Justice campaign, because I feel in so many ways, much like the work that I do with the Campaign for the Fair Sentencing of Youth, Represent Justice has really been just an amazing experience for me to be able to share my story. I never imagined that I would have the chance to have a conversation with you through this amazing and far-reaching platform, and to have the ability to share my story, and to be partners with other surrogates across the country who are also okay.
Okay, there we go. So back
Yeah.
to, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was sharing about Represent Justice. And so very briefly, I just want to say Represent Justice is a social impact campaign of the Just Mercy film, which was produced by Warner Brothers and One Community. One Community is led by Scott Budnick, who's basically envisioned this wonderful campaign to be able to spearhead conversations, to spark meaningful discussion around second chances. And so if you all want to learn more about Represent Justice, please visit representjustice.org. And I feel like I've been sharing a lot. I want to ask you some questions, if you don't mind, George. I'm so curious to know,
Sure.
The fact of the matter is that we're two Black men. Well, I'm half Black, half Mexican. I want to let that be known. But we grew up in environments and in situations that, obviously the outcomes could have been different. And I'm just curious to know, like, what was it like for you, growing up in Indianapolis? Like, did you see similar challenges in your community, things that you experienced growing up? I'm just curious to know, like, what were some of the support systems that made a difference for you?
I mean, for sure. Like you said, I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, in a city on the east side, 34th and Keystone. I come from that background that's, we only knew the street life. We only knew the gangs, the violence, and things like that. So I knew that I had a big cousin of mine who kind of steered me away from the street life. At that point, he always told me that I had something better for my life than to hang around the streets. And
Yeah.
it's crazy because I never tell the story that much, but I remember one day he held a gun to my head and said, "If I catch you out here, me and you are going to fight. You have too much going on in your life, man. You actually can be one of the family members to make it out of here, to make it out of this neighborhood and do right." So I kind of chose that route after that. Rest in peace to him. He got killed this summer.
Sorry to hear that.
Trying to do the right thing, trying to put the gang side out of his life and be there for his two young boys. And it's crazy because, like you said, the second chance, he felt like, man, I have a second chance in life. I have a chance to, work a real job, start a trucking company and things like that, and for him to be out and then end up getting killed by something that he had nothing
Wow.
to do with. He got
Wow.
killed basically trying to go help someone else to get out of their situation, and got kind of ambushed and got killed. But things like that, you know, he was a big factor in my life to keep me out of that. But you know, like I said, when I came inside that Racine Correctional Facility at that point, it kind of hit home for me because, you know, I have a lot of my family that's on the inside right now, and I have a lot of my family that is not here today. And I just wish that, you know, like you said, that they had that person in their life that said, man, hey, look, why are you doing this? Let's
Yeah.
talk. Let me
That's
put
right.
my
That's
arms
right.
around you and be a big brother, a big mentor.
That's
And
right.
and when you think about it, man, like what you're doing now to these young men and women is things that I think a lot of us need to do to those young men and women. Because sometimes that's all these young men and women need is someone to talk to, someone to
Yeah.
relate to, that they don't
Yeah.
feel like, man, is this person going to judge me? Is this person going to not respect me? Is this person going to, and you're like, now for you, you're
Yeah.
sitting there like, man, I see you, I know where you're coming from, but this
Yeah.
ain't the way to go, and you can kind of
Yeah.
prevent that. But like when I came in there, man, it was something that hit me deeply and kind
Yeah.
of brought tears to my eyes to really see
Yeah.
all that stuff, and to meet the men there, because you know, like I said, there was a men there that says I feel like a monster, and
Yeah.
for me that hit me so hard in my gut because like, yes, man, they're there, and I feel like the world treats them like monsters, and
Yeah.
at the end of the
Yeah.
day, we're all human.
That's
Some
right.
may
That's
make
right.
mistakes, and some mistakes are bigger than others, but at the end of
Yeah.
the day, we're all human. We all have a heart. We all put our pants on the same way,
That's
and
right.
I
That's
always
right.
believe in there's good in everybody.
That's right. That's
We
right.
just got
That's
to
right.
find a way to bring it out of them.
Yeah. That's right. You know, it's funny. Like, well, one of the at some point in my work with youth, a saying came to me, and that is, "No child is born bad."
For sure.
And for me, that really speaks to like just the general sense that really that you know that every child, like you said, is inherently good, right? You
Mm,
know, I'm a father, and you're a father today, and
sure.
you know, we think about our own kids. You know, how we want our child to be treated. You know, sadly, many people don't know that you know this country is the only country in the world that gives kids life without the possibility of parole. And what that means is that you would never have an opportunity, and that you're basically deemed as irredeemable,
For
right?
sure.
You're basically deemed as a throwaway child. And sadly, you know, well, many individuals who are growing up in prison today, who are changing for the better, have to contend with the existential nightmare of never ever being able to be released, to be able to live to their fullest potential, to be able to live in a world that speaks to who they really are inside. And sadly, have to wake up to a world that is totally alien to their train of thought about themselves as being compassionate human beings, as being caring human beings. And we saw that at Racine, right?
For sure.
And your words that you shared there, you know, I'll never forget. You know, you said that you believe in second chances, and that you know, there's no one's bad, no one's inherently bad.
For
You
sure.
know, I can speak from my own experience, and you know, growing up in there, many individuals that I grew up with inside the system were some of the most amazing, courageous, some of the most intelligent people I had ever known.
Most talented people.
Yes, most talented people. But sadly, right now, their lives, right now, you know, George, we know this, is in extreme harm's way, right? You
For
know,
sure.
as while many of us are experiencing anxiety and changes to our daily lives, like our experiences are not the same. You know, like, you know, the people inside these prisons, inside the prison system, their lives are in a direct line of fire
For
to
sure.
COVID-19. You
I
know,
mean, that's crazy because that gets to the
yeah,
second question. I said,
yeah,
I just want you to talk to us about the current conditioning, the current conditions,
yeah.
you know, for
Mhm.
incarcerated youth during this
Yeah,
COVID-19, and why is it so important for us to think about how, you know, this
yeah,
is big, and how to think about, you know, for
yeah,
communities right now? Like, how is that? How is the
yeah,
thing that's going on in the prison systems right now
yeah.
so affected, and why is it so effective for this COVID-19?
You know, I think about, you know, adolescence. I think about what it means to be a child. I look back upon my personal experiences inside the system growing up and what that was like, being in a setting that was very much outside my control. Think about illnesses and now, sadly, the reality of the pandemic and what that means within the system is that kids are very much vulnerable, right? And like we look at institutions like, there's in fact there's one in Virginia now who has already reported 25 kids having, being infected with COVID-19. Here in my,
there we go.
Right. I have to say that turnaround was much quicker than the last ones we had, right?
For sure. we got God on our side.
Yeah, that's what's up. That's what's up. I was just saying, I would encourage everyone to take a moment, think about childhood, think about your own child, for example. And I appreciate you asking that question, George, because my daughter goes to school when this wasn't happening, obviously, and would be there for a period of 6.5 to 7 hours throughout the day. She would come home and she wouldn't obviously be there for 24 hours a day. And just those little pockets of time. Think about your child and how often kids come home with the sniffles and they're sick. And next thing you know, everybody in the house is sick. Think about the reality that, kids are just very, they're not thinking about washing their hands the way we do. Like I have an 8-year-old daughter, Sophia, and I cannot tell you the amount of times I have to tell her, Sophie, did you wash your hands?
For sure. And just tell my son that he thinks he can just go use the bathroom and
that's
go
right.
Somewhere. I'm like, you gotta wash your hands, man.
That's right. And I'd be like, okay, let me touch your hand, Sophie. Okay. Not that I don't believe you, but I just know what it means to be a child. And
here we go.
Perfect. Okay.
But there's a big question I need to ask before we get frozen up again.
That's right. Okay.
Because I feel like I just want to make sure we get this out, especially with everyone viewing. What can we do as a community, as individuals in your community to help support, folks that are on the inside? Because like I said, we don't understand what they're going through because we can't see. And I know for sure, just from being on the inside and seeing ththings, that there's a lot that we can do to help. So what can we do as a community to help support those guys, men and women in there?
Yeah, I would say most importantly, the decision makers who have the ability to release folks en masse who can truly decarcerate their systems. Off the top, would be governors and sheriffs, right? These are the individuals throughout the country. If you visit representjustice.org, you will actually find a tool and a means to be able to generate a form that will instantly identify your sheriff to call upon releases, right? And of course, and for those who have to be there, let's look at the conditions. Let's ensure that they have cleaning supplies, that they have masks, and have other things to protect themselves, vitamins. Just think about things that it takes to protect and ensure that people don't get sick. And yet, let those last things I mentioned be the last resort. And in fact, the most important thing is that they go before basically have an opportunity to be able to get out of these places, to return to their communities, to be able to quarantine much like us, and to be able to be free of harm, and particularly of kids. If I had a child in the system today, like if my daughter was in the system today, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night because I understand how challenging and dangerous that is, especially during this time. And sadly, that is a reality for many. I would also encourage folks to, think about, those who are serving these extreme sentences. Parole boards have the great capacity to release folks as well. This is a natural process. This is something that happens throughout the country. Parole board hearings happen on a regular basis, hundreds on a daily basis. If they can expedite those processes, if they can bring folks into those hearings with the presumption of release, particularly those who've served extreme sentences since childhood, then we'll see people coming out and not having to be in those places. And sadly, if we don't do this, we're going to see what's happening around the country continue to happen, sadly. And that is these institutions becoming petri dishes for the infection. And sadly, many are getting sick, and we need to do something about it immediately.